Hello everyone and welcome to my presentation titled Raising Bilingual Children, Family Strategies and Educational Challenges. This is based on the work of M. Victoria Rodriguez, who explored how three Latino families in the United States navigated the process of raising their young daughters bilingually in both Spanish and English. My name is ALIA SOFEA, and in this session, I will walk you through the family stories, the language strategies they use, the barriers they face, and the outcomes they experience. Bilingualism is often seen as a strength, especially in today's global society. But behind every bilingual child is a story, often one of patience, planning, and perseverance. Now, let's explore what those stories look like in this case study. So, this research was an ethnographic case study that took place over 2 to 3 years. Rodriguez used a combination of interviews, observations, and recordings to understand how families in real-world contexts support bilingual development at home and through their communities. So the study followed three young children, Josefina, Kayla, and Thais, who were between 15 and 3 months old when the study began. So rather than focus on test scores or formal school setting, this case zoomed in on the daily lives of the families, what they valued, how they communicated, and what actually happened as their children grew up with two languages. This made the research deeply personal but also incredibly informative. So now, let's meet the three families featured in this study. Each child's environment was slightly different, but all shared the same goal, which is to raise a bilingual children. So the first one, we have Josefina Cortez. Josefina Cortez came from a mostly Spanish-speaking household. Her mother was committed to speaking Spanish at home, but she also enrolled Josefina in an English-speaking daycare, hoping that she would learn both languages naturally. Next, we have Kayla Jimenez. Kayla spent much of her day with her Spanish-speaking great-grandmother and her mother. Her father spoke only English, while the intention was to expose her to Spanish during the day. She often received mixed input due to family dynamics and limited access to affordable bilingual daycare. And lastly, we have Thais Velasquez. Thais also spoke Spanish at home, but she had two older brothers and access to English TV and media. As a result, she was exposed to both languages quite early, and her language preferences also changed over time. So from this introduction, we can already see that home language environments are never identical. Even when the parents share similar goals, this diversity helps us understand the many paths bilingualism can take. So, why bilingualism? Now, why did these families choose to raise their children bilingually? First and foremost, to keep their cultural roots and communicate with grandparents. It was about maintaining their cultural identity. For these families, Spanish was more than just a language. It was a link to their history, their values, and their extended family. Communication with grandparents and older relatives was only possible in Spanish, and the parents didn't want their children to lose that connection. Second, to gain cognitive and academic advantages. Many studies show that bilingual children have better attention control, memory, and also problem solving skills. The parents in this study believe that speaking two languages would help their children excel in school. Finally, to have better economic opportunities. So in the future, they believe that bilingualism would lead to better opportunities, especially in the workforce. In a global economy, being able to switch between English and Spanish can be a valuable asset. So overall, these families viewed bilingualism as something that would benefit their children's personality, socially, and professionally. So the internal family strategies. Inside the home, each family had their own strategies to support Spanish. The most common strategy was speaking only Spanish at home. Parents tried to create a Spanish-rich environment where English was kept to a minimum. The language feel natural. Next, they also use Spanish media, like watching Spanish cartoons and TV shows, to make the language feel natural and fun. The third one, reading books and singing songs in Spanish, was another common approach. And lastly, one family even used the one person, one language method. So what is the meaning of one person, one language method? This method means that where one parent spoke only Spanish and the other spoke only English. So basically, these internal strategies were built on the idea that children absorb what they hear most frequently. But as we will see later, just hearing a language is not always enough. Children need to use it actively, and that requires more than the exposure. It requires interaction. Moving on to the external community strategies. The families also tried to support Spanish through external strategies in the community. This included enrolling their children in bilingual daycare programs. Although these were not always easy to access or afford. Second one, encouraging interactions with extended family members who spoke only Spanish. And the third one is using technology to stay connected to relatives and in their home country, like video calls with Spanish-speaking relatives, such as their grandparents who live far away. And lastly, choosing Spanish language media such as songs, YouTube channels, and also educational games. These strategies reflect a key idea in bilingualism research: community and culture matter. Children learn faster and retain more when the language feels meaningful, social, and connected to the people they love. Despite their strong motivations and thoughtful strategies, all three families experienced similar and significant challenges. One major issue was excessive exposure to English. Even though Spanish was spoken at home, the children spend most of their time in daycare or school settings that use English. Additionally, TV shows, games, and digital content were mostly in English. As a result, English naturally became their preferred language, not because they disliked Spanish, but because English felt easier and more common. Another challenge was sibling influence. In two of the families, older siblings often spoken to the younger children in English, even though they were capable of using Spanish. So when older siblings choose English, younger children almost always follow. And the third one, the families also struggled with access to resources. Bilingual daycares were either too expensive or unavailable in their area. Without formal support systems, the families had to manage everything on their own, which added stress and uncertainty. And lastly, the parents underestimated how hard it would be. They thought that Spanish would stick naturally, but in reality, it started to fade, especially when children didn't have chances to speak it actively. Now let's look at what actually happened with the children language development. So, first one, we look at Josefina. So Josefina understood Spanish quite well. However, she rarely spoke it unless someone directly asked her to. She preferred to speak English even at home. And moving on to Kayla. Kayla also understood Spanish but only used a few words. Her main language, even in early childhood, was English. Thais, on the other hand, had stronger Spanish at first. She used it confidently until about age 5. But once she entered school and spent more time with friends and English-speaking peers, her use of Spanish dropped, and English became dominant. What these results tell us is that understanding a language is not the same as using it. These children became receptive bilinguals, which means that they could understand Spanish but didn't feel comfortable enough to speaking it. This is a common issue and it raises in an important question. Is passive bilingualism enough? Or should our goal be active bilingualism, where children can comfortably switch between languages in any situation? So, we're now moving on to the critical reflection. So, the family started with a clear plan. Spanish would come from home, and English would come from school and society. They believed the balance would happen naturally, but the reality was different because English was used in almost every part of the children's life, school, TV, and also their peer influence. It quickly became dominant. Spanish, even though valued, became secondary. This shift wasn't intentional, it just happened gradually. And by the time parents realized what was happening, it was difficult to reverse. This teaches us that language loss isn't sudden. It can happen slowly through everyday habits, especially when one language is socially stronger than the other. So, what can we learn from this case study? First, bilingualism doesn't happen automatically. It takes attention, consistency, and also support from families, schools, and communities. Second, home use of a language. While important is not enough by itself, children need opportunities to use both languages in meaningful ways, not just listen passively. Third, we learn that parents and educators must work together. Language development is not just a personal issue, it is a community matter. Lastly, this case helps us reflect on how English dominance can unintentionally lead to the fading of home languages. Without strong support, minority languages risk being lost within 1 or 2 generations. These lessons are not just relevant in the United States, they apply to multilingual countries like Malaysia as well, where languages like Tamil, Mandarin, and indigenous languages need careful support. So, based on these experiences, here are some practical recommendations for both parents and also educators. So, we focus on parent for educators first. So, for the educators, we as a teacher need to encourage children to use their home language in the classroom through writing activities, group discussions, or projects. Next, offer dual language programs or support policies that promote language diversities. Educators also need to collaborate with families to understand children's language backgrounds and celebrate their bilingual identities. And lastly, promote positive attitudes toward bilingualism. You can make sure children feel proud of speaking another language. And next, for the parents, parents must speak the home language consistently, even when the child responds in English. And next, parents can create daily routines that involve the home language, like reading bedtime stories, singing songs, or having designated language time. And then you can use Spanish media such as music, cartoons, audiobooks, and mobile apps. And lastly, connect with family members who speak the language. We can involve relatives and family friends who speak the language even through video calls. These steps may seem small, but together they can make a huge difference in helping children develop and maintain two or more languages. So that concludes the main part of my presentation. Now I will be answering a few prepared questions. These are questions that I believe would come up in a live audience, and they address some of the most important concerns about bilingualism in early childhood. So let's begin with the first one. So why did the children speak more English than Spanish, even though the families use Spanish at home? So the main reason is that the majority language dominates most parts of a child's environment. Children hear English at school, on TV, in games, and even from siblings or teachers. Over time, children start to see English as the normal or cool language, and if Spanish or any other home language is only used in limited settings, like with parents, it starts to feel less relevant. So even if children understand the home language, they might not feel motivated to use it unless it is part of their daily, social, and emotional lives. So next question is, what role did siblings and media play in shaping the children language use? So if older siblings prefer English, younger siblings almost always follow. And media like YouTube or games is mostly in English. So unless families intentionally choose Spanish content, children will spend most of their time interacting with English. So this is why media choices and sibling habits needs to be managed, because they shape what children see as normal. So now the third question is, were the families aware of how difficult it would be to maintain bilingualism? Not entirely. Most families in the case study understood the value of bilingualism and had strong reasons for wanting their children to speak both Spanish and English. However, they were not fully prepared of how challenging it would be to maintain the home language, especially in an English-dominant environment. So the fourth question is, what can educators do to support families like this? So educators play a key role in maintaining and promoting bilingualism, especially when families are trying to support a minority or heritage language at home. So based on the case study and current best practices, here's how educators can help. First, it can acknowledge and value home languages. The educators should recognize that children's home languages are a part of their identity and not a barrier to learning. Next, educators can create bilingual friendly classroom. Even if the school does not have a formal bilingual program, teachers can still encourage the use of home languages. And the next one, educators can partner with families. Communication between teachers and parents is key. And the last question is, what did you personally learned from this case study? So for me, personally, the things that I learned from this case study is that the biggest lesson is bilingualism needs effort, not just intention. Every family in this study wanted their child to be bilingual, but only one came close, and even then it was not easy. This shows that parents, teachers, and communities must work together. If we want to raise children who are proud of their language and culture, we have to give them daily chances to speak, connect, and express themselves in both languages. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this presentation. I hope it gave you meaningful insight into the challenges and possibilities of raising bilingual children. Please reflect on how we, as educators, future parents, or community members, can support families like the one in this case study. Language is more than communication, it is connection. Thank you.